You're listening to The Watchers, the show where two women from opposite ends of New Jersey watch movies and TV about the FBI's most unwanted.
Aliens!
And also aliens. We're here.
I'm Jody.
I'm Andrea.
Here. Yeah. What do we watch?
We watched the X-Files pilot.
We sure did.
I'm so happy.
How many episodes have you watched since watching the pilot?
Well, I watched 5 that night, which was two days ago, and I haven't watched any TV since. So that's how many. But
okay, that's pretty good.
Yeah, I had to watch through to the Jersey Devil episode, which fans of the X-Files like me, I'm always surprised at how quickly they get to the Jersey Devil. And this episode could just be about that Jersey Devil episode.
We should have watched that one. I know that that's not the point of what we're doing, but
it
that
would
should have
make
been
you furious. It makes me so mad. They are
really?
Yeah, they do. I kind of love the episode because
do they not understand?
It's a Bigfoot episode. Like it's like they didn't even Google Jersey Devil. It's really disrespectful if you ask me.
Sad.
Yeah. So
poor Mother Leeds.
Yeah, it's pretty bad. Like the story, if they put it anywhere else and just did it as a Bigfoot story, but I think what they wanted to do, like a take on a Bigfoot story that hasn't been done yet. And instead of just doing that, but still letting it be like a Bigfoot story, they were like, we'll just use a different kind of cryptid.
That's disrespectful.
No wings, no hooves.
I'm sorry, what?
No wings, no hooves, not a kangaroo. I don't want to spoil what it ends up being, but it is really like...
The Jersey Devil has leathery wings and goat-like hooves.
Like, obviously, right? Like everybody knows that. And a horse and a horse head. Yeah.
Exactly. He's very cute.
Yeah. Yeah.
In like a horrifying kind of way.
It's truly... Man, I just want to... We can't.
No, I know. I didn't watch it, so I only watched the pilot. I did not keep going because I'm still watching 6 Feet Under after we started that like a couple weeks ago.
10 million downloads, and it'll be our first Patreon episode.
There we go. Yeah, we've already threatened like 4 different things for that, but yeah.
But I mean it this time.
So here's my confession. I still think I probably watched an episode or 2 here or there, but I have no recollection of this show, other than the like extreme cultural significance of it throughout my like early college years.
Yeah, and that's
but I
so you
no
went in
concept
pretty blank slate as one could be.
Yes, extremely blank slate.
That's
other than
cool.
knowing that it's Mulder and Scully, that it's the whole I want to believe that. You know, I mean, obviously, Gillian Anderson, huge fan in general. David Duchovny, I knew more from Californication, which he did after this.
Yeah.
Which was a weird show.
Yeah,
and then,
I watched a lot of it because
I did
it was
too.
him, but...
Yeah, and then there was also, he was in, was it like Red Shoe Diaries or some weird...
Correct.
Yeah, I remember that as well. But this is his like main thing he's known for.
And it's prime peak David Duchovny. He is so beautiful in this show.
They're both so beautiful.
They're incredible. It's like painful.
Gillian Anderson looks simultaneously 25 and 40.
Man, that is the 90s, isn't it?
It really is. Like the oversized jackets and the like dark lip and the bob haircut. Like
her suits are incredible.
Yeah.
Her hair in this episode is the least 90s it is the whole first season. The whole first. It is. I was like, I remember. I mean, I've watched and rewatched the show. It's my comfort show. I put it on all the time. But I haven't like sat down and watched it from episode 1 straight through.
Yeah.
In quite a long time. So I was like, oh, I thought her hair was way crazier in the beginning, but they wait until after the pilot. So episode 2, it is like
really,
yeah.
Because I felt like. So the thing that occurred to me while I was watching it about her hair specifically was like we weren't using a lot of sort of anti-frizz stuff in the 90s.
Yeah, no.
Like, there was not a lot of smoothing going on with the hair. She looked adorable.
But yeah, she could have used a little,
Yeah.
They also...
Yeah, the jackets were pretty incredible.
Yeah, it's amazing. The hair, I think, is they were originally, obviously, you don't need to know much about the show to know that Clarice Starling was an obvious inspiration. I don't know where. It's 7:00 p.m. and we usually record at like between 10 and 11 a.m. I'm just telling our listeners that because apparently my voice is gone. So that's why I sound like this. But she's obviously Clarice Starling. And
Definitely.
So I think that's why in the pilot anyway, her hair is a little less styled. And then once, they came back to the actual series after the pilot, they get a little fun and funky with her bob.
That's so funny. Yeah, in my head, she has always been and always will be about 40 years old. Mm-hmm. Like, even now, she's still 40.
She's... no offense to David Duchovny, but they really do. I said to you over text, it's like they're both on a trajectory of hotness. Like, I think he is so beautiful in this first season, and he continues. I mean, he's an incredibly handsome man. I love him. But there is a moment where their hotness intersects, and then he gets less hot, and she just, I think there's no ceiling. I fear for all of us that there's no ceiling to how hot she can get, because I love her.
I think she's getting hotter.
It seems impossible, but also is happening. Yeah. That's the real unexplained phenomena, if you ask me.
Yes. That's very true. Because she continues to get hotter.
She is playing 29 at the beginning of the series. She is only 24. She does look, like you said, 42.
Yeah.
David Duchovny is playing around his age. I think he's a little older now.
Yeah, he was born in 1960.
Well, and Fox was born in 61. His birthday... If you could, do you want to guess Fox Mulder's birthday? It's so funny.
The only thing that's coming to my mind is like Halloween.
You're so close. It's the next spookiest one you could have.
Next? Day of the Dead? I'm like, what is spooky?
October 13th.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
You're right that the next spookiest holiday you could have would then be Day of the Dead, but the next spookiest date on the calendar would be October 13th, because sometimes it's going to fall on a Friday.
Right. That's fair. So he's a Libra.
He's a Libra.
Interesting. I would not have pegged him for a Libra.
Well, he's looking for the truth, which is kind of like justice.
Yeah.
There's like a way to...
I guess.
Okay, so...
Yeah.
What are your just overall? It's okay. You can't hurt me.
Says the person wearing the Mulder shirt.
It says Mulder, it's me. It's technically a Scully shirt because it's in her voice. So.
Right, of course. Okay. I had fun. I enjoyed it. I had a good time.
Fun. Isn't it fun? Oh,
I mean, it was very 90s. So, I was pulled out a little bit by the special effects. Mm-hmm. Because there were some, like, really lots of glowing lights that people just kind of faded off into. And
it's such a comfort for me to see that stuff. When they lose time, the way they show that with just the two freeze frames that kind of overlap in the color filter, it's so funny.
Oh, my God. I know. That took me out of it a little bit. But no, I had a good time. I mean, I liked the movie Silence of the Lambs, shockingly. And so I think that the hard part for me about this is I really don't care about aliens. I kind of feel like they're probably out there somewhere. They probably exist just by like statistics, the idea that, but like until I see one, like, okay, cool.
Yeah. Yeah. What have you done for me lately?
Right. So the actual subject matter is not super interesting to me, but I like the sort of like, I love an odd couple. I love a, like, you know, we've talked before about the, like, man of science, man of faith, like, you know, dichotomy, which is always fun. I wrote down, ooh, I want to investigate stuff.
That's one of the things I love so much is because it's the 90s, all they have is their, like, when they enter a room with their flashlights out, like looking like the fucking Hardy Boys or like Nancy Drew, it makes me so happy. Scully's Doogie Howser laptop, it's just like all of that makes me so happy. To go back to what you said about the aliens and not being that interested in that, there are two kinds of X-Files fans, and you tend to either be one who cares about the episodes that are about the ongoing alien investigation, the sort of myth arc episodes, or you are a Monster of the Week fan. And what isn't clear from this first episode is that, I mean, the show got 20 plus episodes a season for 9 seasons before it came back for 2 more in the late 2010s. Right. So not every episode is an alien episode. Sometimes there are many standalone episodes, and those are always all of my favorite episodes are Monster of the Week episodes. Like if we weren't doing a pilot watch right now and we were doing like a gateway episode run, I would absolutely show you one of the Monster of the Week episodes for sure.
I could also see like because there's another area of it that is a trope in other shows that I've enjoyed, which is like, ooh, the government is like hiding something, you know, and they're like being shut down, and you know, so I also enjoyed that part of it. I think I remembered you saying that it has sort of, because when we talked about the way that like we talked about this with Yellow Jackets, and I don't remember what the other show we brought it up with, but like how there's an overarching arc story, and then there's like a this of the week way of being. You brought this up then, and so I think when I was going into it, I knew that often it is sort of a Monster of the Week situation.
Right. Yeah, I think that format of the like having the Monster of the Week versus the Myth Arc episodes, and I think it's really smart. And whenever I do a rewatch, I very seldom am throwing on the like continued storyline episodes.
So you're not watching it when you rewatch. You're not watching like in order. You're just kind of putting on a random one, or
yeah. I've done a rewatch straight through probably twice, but if I'm like, I used to, when I was teaching, it was my grading paper show, and so I would just pick an episode that I love, and jump around. And it works for that if you're just watching Monster of the Week ones for sure. God, it has some really incredible stuff, especially if you love the Mulder Scully dynamic, where it's just like them out investigating some weird little small town freak thing and being buds about it.
Yeah, that I can see being fun. Like I mentioned to you, I texted you last night that one thing that kind of caught me off guard was that they're both such good actors, but they're also so like, they're not green here, but they feel a little bit, at least in this first episode, little stilted maybe or something.
Well, Gillian Anderson had only been on camera, I think she said one other time before she shot this pilot. She came from a theater background. Right. So that's why she feels a little theater to me.
Sure. But it was funny. It was Duchovny that I noticed it more with, and he had been working before this, but I felt like there's like I think I said there's like a breathlessness to the way they talk to each other in this episode that is like, it felt a little, maybe it's just that it's older and people talked slower in the 90s.
Oh, that could also be. His character isn't quite settled here yet either, and that's maybe also part of it, is that he's still figuring out how to play him. He like comes across to me like a little more pompous and sort of like know-it-all-y than he is later.
Sure. Yeah, so, I mean, I think I could see that. I was actually expecting one of them to be more pompous than either of them actually are in this episode. Like, she entertains him more than I expected her to, and he, like, although there is a moment where it was almost a "you can't handle the truth" phrase that he said. He said, I don't think you're ready for what I think.
Uh-huh. Well,
And
because
then
she
she
says,
said-
I want the truth.
She said, I'm here to solve this case, Mulder. I want the truth. And so, like, that stuff was, like...
It's a little melodramatic sometimes.
Yeah.
But in a way that I just find really, like, fun and charming.
It was sweet.
The thing I do love so much that it's, like... Because it's kind of like we talked about with Twin Peaks, where in a different kind of show, in a more obvious show, Agent Cooper shows up to town and he thinks everybody there is an idiot and he's the straight man.
Right.
And in this show, it should be that Scully is just interfering all the time, trying to get in Mulder's way, and he's got to go around her. But it's more, she's just like, here's what I think. And he's like, okay, well, I think it's this crazy thing. And she's like, well, I don't think so, but let's go figure it out.
Their dynamic was fun. I could see it being a comfort watch. Like, I could definitely see that.
I just love how much they like each other right away.
Also, they're driving a Ford Taurus, which
God,
was really
I love to
appropriate.
see the cars. I know we always say it, but I really
Yeah.
love to see the cars.
Yeah. I was like, of course they're in a Ford Taurus. That's very government employee in the 90s. And of course he's in a basement with a slide projector.
God, the slide projector that he is so funny. First of all, that character reveal, if you had never seen, I don't think I watched from the very first episode, but I mean, I was 6, right? I was 7 when the show came out, so I don't have very distinct memories of watching the first season, though I know I did, but I don't know if I watched the first episode. But when she goes down there and knocks on the door and he says there's nobody in here but the FBI's most unwanted, and then he like turns in his seat and his little floppy hair, and he's got the light box with the slides on it, and he's got those glasses so you know he's a nerd even though he's so handsome. It's such a good reveal. It makes me laugh every time.
It's a little Val Kilmer in... Yeah. It's a little Val Kilmer in Real
totally
Genius.
See that. That's so funny. The idea, the Mulder and Scully are, it's very like Chris Knight, Mitch Taylor. Totally. Yeah, the slide projector as the like exposition in so many episodes of Mulder with he'll have like a fun little slideshow. There's something that happens in this episode that I have always been curious about. And I finally, on this watch through, have an expert who can tell us exactly who this is. And if you happen to be listeners, I don't know, I've referenced my Battlestar Galactica podcast a few times. And the person I'm about to introduce is somebody who I've called in for his expert opinion there before. And I'm realizing this is the first time Daniel Cohen, who's about to be introduced, this is the first time where your actual area of expertise is useful, because I've brought Daniel in to talk about like literal rocket science, and you're not a rocket scientist. Daniel, I've invited you here today because something happens on this episode of The X-Files that Jody and I watched, and I would just like your scientific input. So, welcome to the podcast, Daniel Cohen. Can you let our listeners know what your area of expertise is and like?
Yeah. I am a scientist at a biotech company. My job title is protein and peptide scientist. Background is I have a PhD in chemical biology.
So Daniel, what happens in this episode is Mulder shows this slide to Scully, and he says, how's your chemistry? This is a substance found in the surrounding tissue of a body. And Scully says, well, hold on. I'm not going to tell you what Scully says. Can you tell me what we're looking at right now?
This is like a generic structure for a protein or a peptide. Proteins and peptides are made out of small repeating units called amino acids, and they vary only in the area where this one says R.
Okay.
So R is the chemistry shorthand for this could be basically anything. So this is just 3 amino acids in a protein. And it's drawn pretty much correctly, although a little bit sloppily.
So it's a bunch of bullshit, is what you're saying?
It's actually a real thing. Like this is like you'd see as a shorthand for like this is what a protein would be, but not what the protein is or really what much of any information about it at all. And this is also, you can see the dashes on the top and the bottom are to designate like this is part of a larger, because proteins are typically 100 or more amino acids.
Okay.
So this is just 3 generic amino acids. This is basically enough to analogize it. Like, you can see that this is a protein, but not what the protein is. Just like you might be able to see that something is a word, but not know what the word is. That's the level of detail that we have here. So it's a real thing, but you wouldn't be like, I found this molecule that could be pretty much anything.
Right. It's not something that a scientist would look at and be like, wow, that's weird.
Yeah, this would be something that a scientist would look at and say, that was in my first semester biochemistry class in college.
That was going to be my follow-up question. At what level of your education would you have been where I could show you this and you could recognize it? Would you have to have gone to med school?
Oh, absolutely not. No, I mean, I would have learned this structure probably my first semester of undergrad.
Okay.
Some people even learn this in high school.
Some people even learn this in high school. So Scully, who works for the FBI
and is a medical doctor,
and is a medical doctor, as they say, believes it
would not have passed the MCAT.
Okay.
Would not have gotten into medical
Really
school.
good to know, because she does say she follows up with it's inorganic. I don't know.
Wrong. Incorrect.
Right there already. It's
the protein.
It's certainly
Revoke her
organic.
license.
Definitively organic. You're telling me. Categorically organic.
Straight to med school jail.
Yes.
Okay. Then she says, is it some kind of synthetic protein? And now this is just me being stupid. I don't know the answer to this. I'm guessing you would. How might someone tell the difference between I don't even know if this is a real question, an organic protein and a synthetic protein?
Yeah, that's a real question. I mean,
okay, great. Thank you so much.
Good job.
Thank you.
But by you basically couldn't, unless you are specifying that these are amino acids that don't occur in nature, which is a thing that you can make synthetically. Synthetically means you make it in the lab by mixing chemicals versus naturally occurring, some organism somewhere makes it.
Daniel, I think I have no further questions, Your Honor. Jody, do you have any other X-Files or rocket science related science
No, I think
questions
we've
for
learned
Daniel?
that Dana Scully, as hot as she is, should probably not have a medical license and maybe shouldn't be working for the FBI.
Like, okay, wait, wouldn't they have been better off just putting any old gobbledygook up there and then saying,
yes,
I don't recognize
100%.
it.
That's what I was wondering. Like, if this is so recognizable.
Yeah, exactly.
I vastly prefer when sci-fi shows do this. Like, Eureka is so full of like, I just made up some bullshit science babble, but they're not trying to make it real. Like, I feel like that's a good example. If you could just like make up some Star Trek nonsense,
right.
and that is better than this. I want to also add that when Andrea sent me this, I'm like, I don't even need to know what this is from, because a colleague first showed this to me like 10 years ago when we were in grad school together doing peptide science in the lab.
Of course.
And we were laughing at it back then. Like, why would you try and make this a real thing when you could have just put some nothing up there?
Okay. Well, I think that's all I need you here for right now, Daniel. If I think of anything else, I'll page you on your scientist pager.
Yeah, I'll send you an invoice for my podcast consulting service.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me. This was fun.
Anytime. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Science.
Now we know.
Yeah, so was glad to have an actual scientist weigh in on that, because I had a feeling there was something going on there. But it just, like I said,
I was surprised at how bullshit that was.
Yeah, but how weirdly bullshit, not bullshit. Like how wrong it was. But I just 100% assumed that the answer was going to be like, it's all gobbledygook. I don't fucking know. But it's actually like, no, it's actually really basic. And that's what the bullshit of it is. Right.
That's the thing yeah, exactly. That's the bullshit part. It's like, if you're going to do something that has some semblance of like reality in it, why would you do something that's in like a chemistry 101 textbook?
Yeah. It's although I guess maybe in the 90s, because like you or I could probably if I Google Lens search that, it might tell me what it was. We didn't have that access in the 90s, so who knows?
I certainly didn't know what the fuck it was.
Inorganic.
But I am not a science person.
Right. So now we've got definitive proof there that poor Scully, for all of her. Again, a medical doctor.
Yeah.
You know what's funny is now a show like X-Files would probably have people on set confirming, like,
absolutely.
It would be...
Yeah, they wouldn't get away with that now. They'd have to find it because people are screenshotting the shit out of these shows.
Exactly.
Yeah, there's no way they would get away with that.
It's very funny to me. So that was that. If you're a listener and you have some sort of expertise in the subject matter that we often cover, feel free to reach out. I love to look to the experts.
Yeah. I really was sort of like swept along with the investigation part of it. And it's one of the reasons I like sort of other case of the week. Like, I was never a Law and Order person, but I do like other serial shows like that. Where each week it's like they have to figure it out, and then at the end of the episode you have a resolution and you feel like, cool, all right, good, you know, you can kind of move on.
Yeah, and the X-Files obviously follows their version of that, right? It's supernatural, so I would say more of the episodes did not end with a kind of resolution, but is often like, oh, but you know, like they're not often tying things up in a little bow. And I think, so Chris Carter, the show's creator, has listed, and I don't think you would even need to know that he's explicitly said, The Twilight Zone as a major influence. And then, and then also...
Twin Peaks?
Actually, a little bit, yeah, but his two main influences were... The Twilight Zone and Kolchak the Night Stalker, which I just realized I have thought Kolchak and Kojak were the same show. So Kolchak the Night Stalker, I can't believe I've never watched it. It's a sci-fi show. I didn't know that. I thought it was like Kojak.
Yeah, I've never even heard of it.
It's a newspaper reporter uncovers supernatural cases in his investigations. His thought was like those kinds of shows, but with something that would connect episode to episode, and then very smartly fashioning them as FBI agents so that they have more access, and also so it's not like they're small town people where something weird happens every other week and you just kind of have to accept that. You know, Buffy had that problem at first until you learn that they're built, and like the clever conceit for that show is that Sunnydale is built on a hellmouth, and so there's more paranormal supernatural activity there.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think it was interesting that the first episode was set in like rural Oregon, because that's Twin Peaks was Washington, but it's still that like weird Pacific Northwest, woodsy, like rainy and dark.
Famously shot in Vancouver. The first episode, which was originally supposed to take place somewhere in the southeast, like maybe West Virginia. Would you call that the Southeast? I forget exactly where, but it just ended up being that like they couldn't make it work there. And so the quote is something like, so we went to where all the really cool forests are, which is the Pacific Northwest.
Yeah. It definitely felt like I didn't know that it was not the first choice, but to me it seems like a logical place to shoot it, just because like it feels like they were always in the rain in that episode. For real. They're always like wet outside. Just
frustratingly,
damp.
They do go to the Pine Barrens in the Jersey Devil episode, and it's so obviously West Coast, Pacific Northwest forests.
That's because the Pine Barrens are a unique biosphere.
You can't replicate them anywhere. Like if you're going to do it, you have to go to the Pine Barrens. But
famously short trees,
knee high. So
yeah.
They tried, though. They tried. So before we've kind of, I feel like every week we're like, I know we're a little all over the place this time, as if we're not always. But before we get into like our general framework that we've been applying, I'm curious to see if you can tell me what the plot of this episode is.
Oh, God. This is yeah. Okay, here we go. A bunch of teenagers that graduated high school the same year have died. Mm-hmm. Some of them have one of them that just died has mysterious dots on their back. So Mulder and Scully go to the place where this happened. They exhume a body. They find it to be not a human. And then the local sheriff starts interfering. They go to a psych hospital to talk to this boy and this other person that were found in the woods, maybe. Yeah, this is hard. And then it turns out that the guy in the psych hospital had killed someone else and there was aliens.
Yeah.
How'd I do?
I mean, I think you did great considering what we're given.
Yeah, it's a little convoluted for a first episode.
Well, and it's convoluted in a way that I think kind of hides some of the things that don't make total sense. Like, because at the end, Billy is there with Teresa, and it looks like it's about ready to go off without a hitch.
Right.
But something happens.
Right,
and the aliens,
yeah.
But we don't know what, other than the fact that maybe they realized they were found out, is I think what we've all sort of decided, but that doesn't really make sense.
Yeah. It's funny, like, you'd think that would have bothered me more, but I was kind of like, so because it's the pilot, I felt like, okay, they're setting up a lot right now, and I also know that this goes on for like a million episodes, and that's
a really good point. That
if I watched it when it first started, like as a pilot, the night it aired, I might have been like, huh? Like, this seems fun, but like, what?
Yeah. Or also knowing, because there's, again, Monster of the Week episodes, there are also alien episodes that don't really directly connect to the greater alien conspiracy. And this is sort of one of them. It's not like, oh, well, we'll find out why these specific, like, whatever it is, aliens, who knows,
Yeah.
have pulled away because they'll come back. I think it's, like, I've just always been like, okay. I mean, I'm fine with it, but...
Yeah.
But
it felt to me more like the real story of the episode was government knows things, is hiding it from these people.
Yeah. Were you surprised at how quickly they sort of admit that the government is involved with something?
Not really, because it kind of felt in the beginning like we're coming in sort of midstream. Like, we're coming in and Mulder's been doing this for a while and they're a little like fed up. And so they're bringing in Scully to kind of like shut him down with facts or whatever. And like, but it feels like it's been going on for a while, and it's not like it's set up in the beginning because they're bringing her in.
Right.
So it feels like they're bringing her in a, like, with a reason that is not just like what they're saying it is.
Right.
So that to me made the government is in on it part of it make more sense.
Yeah. I think it's really clever that it's not just everybody thinks Mulder's a kook and it's just up to Mulder to prove to us. Like, they will just show us, like that last scene where that character who has no lines, we all know him to be the cigarette smoking man now, but drops off that little piece of alien technology, or that little piece of whatever technology that she recovers from the body. And then you just see that there are aisles and aisles and aisles, a la Indiana Jones. It's so good. I think it's very fun.
Yeah. That there were a lot of things in this where it's like, is this a trope from before or after the X-Files? Because I could see it becoming something that then shows up in later shows, but then also, like, you know, referencing the stuff that came before it. There's so many things where I was like, this is such a trope, and like not in a negative way, but like lady running in the forest in a nightgown. The woods are glowing. You know, bloody nose. Like,
bloody nose.
You know,
bloody nose.
Yeah.
Instant. It's like if you cough in a movie, you're dead. If your nose is bleeding, there's something supernatural affecting you. Yeah,
exactly.
And I don't know where it started, but there is a lot of it in the X-Files for sure.
Yeah. It's funny, I keep bringing up 6 Feet Under. So every week there's, obviously it starts with a new death, and recently there was one where a woman died from a bloody nose.
That's a big
terrifying
fear of mine.
Yeah, no, it's terrifying. It was hard for me to watch it. Other tropes that I noted. Person who's had non-mental illness related experience in a mental hospital. You can't handle the truth. The compass not working.
I love
very Yellow Jackets. Or Yellow Jackets, very X-Files.
Mm-hmm.
She goes to take a candlelit bath. I was like, what?
I think, like, I realized that motel just didn't have a shower, but maybe...
Which is gross.
Yeah, so gross that anybody who's washed their body in that place has been in that tub.
Gross.
But, so, like, I think... I was just going to say, maybe if the power's out, skip the bath. But I think, no matter what, maybe just skip the bath. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I'm not bathing in there. I'm sorry.
No.
It's always raining.
It works. When they have that little sort of, like, head-to-head when it's raining. And she's like, so you're telling me blah, 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 blah. And then they both kind of laugh. And he's so delighted to be so close to this, like, whole thing that he's been chasing. And they're both kind of exhilarated. And it kind of, to me, only feels believable because it's raining. Like, I'm like, you can't act like that if the weather's nice.
Oh, definitely not. Yeah, no, raining in a cemetery, like, that just, like... Also, there's no way a Ford Taurus is driving in those woods over, like...
Mulder does a great job reversing through trees.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I had a very similar car. That doesn't work. The coffin rolling down the hill, that got a good laugh out of me.
It's it's so slapsticky.
Especially because, again, I'm watching 6 Feet Under, and it's like, that literally, there's been a lot of weird crossovers. I'm on season 3 of 6 Feet Under right now, and there was a person who died from a bloody nose, and then there was a person who, like, fell out of their coffin, and the coffin fell off the thing it was on.
I wonder how often that happens.
Oh, God.
Horrifying.
I don't want to know.
Horrifying.
I don't want to know. Yeah. So all of those things were really funny. Oh, and the turbulence on the airplane. I
was struck by that this time because it's like, I guess the idea is that, I mean, it's just turbulence, the way that, like, those mosquito bites are just mosquito bites. And I guess the idea is, like, you know, when we're watching a show like this where anything could be part of the conspiracy, it's fun to just throw some stuff in there that isn't really.
Well, and the radio changing on, like, in the car and the compass, like, you know, thinking about things that interfere with electricity.
That's another one of those. It's also very Losty.
And Yellow Jackets. Yeah.
Mulder just happens to bring spray paint with him wherever he goes so that he can mark points on roads.
Yes, of course.
He's so happy to have lost time.
I know. And it's so funny. I had a moment when she felt like those bumps on her back where I was like, no, I know this isn't going to happen because this is like a 8 million episode show. But, like, for some reason, it didn't occur to me that it would be bug bites.
Well, because
of course it's just an excuse for her to, like, show up in a bra. Right.
Which I will say is not, for all of the will they, won't they of this show that fans are so obsessed with, that is like a weird outlier for this show. They don't do that often or really at all.
Well, that was probably to pull people in.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and
it's probably to pull people in at the pilot and be like, you never know.
Exactly. And I know with casting, they had a hard time casting Scully, and specifically Gillian Anderson. Like, Chris Carter really wanted her, but the network wanted somebody a little more like, they keep using the word bombshell. And Gillian Anderson is obviously...
Have they seen Gillian Anderson?
Yeah. I mean, she's beautiful, but she's also, like, you know what they mean.
Yes. I did notice that she was wearing a cross in this episode. Which I guess, as I've done a little bit of research, I guess she's Catholic in the show, and that comes in occasionally, which I think is interesting because it doesn't come down like exactly evenly on Man of Science, Man of Faith, because she has Catholic faith.
Right.
which is
Yeah.
contradictory to science.
Yeah, it's like it shows because it's Scully of science, Mulder of it's a kind of faith, certainly, right?
Yeah.
But even that line doesn't totally work when they're so like, I just think there are only so many times you can see the kinds of things that Scully sees early on in the show,
Right.
and remain totally skeptical.
Right.
They do a good job of having her be like, I think something's going on here. I just don't think it's aliens. Or I
Right.
think something's going. I just don't think it's blah blah blah. For a while, at least. But But again, the show got 9 seasons in its first run. So
I'm surprised it took them until like season. I think I saw it said season 6 for them to get together.
late. It's like technically season 7.
Good God.
Yeah.
That is a really long time.
Yeah, and
wait.
I think it works for me because it works for me because it makes me insane and I want them to kiss from day one,
Sure.
of course. But also it's not just like romantic sexual tension that they have that waiting to be resolved. They are like genuine friends who really care
Right.
about and love each other. And so it's still really lovely to watch them interact that way, even without, like, I think if you're somebody who isn't interested in that, you can totally watch up through the end of season 6 and believe that they are just 2 colleagues and friends who really do love and care about each other. I kind of like that it gives you both.
Yeah.
You can watch it both ways.
Yeah, because I think it would be kind of actually interesting to not have a male and female lead like get together in that way. But I mean, they're both so hot.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, how would they not?
And like, even when they're flirting, they flirt so much, like even in this first episode, but it's still very sweet. And like, you just know, especially like the annoying version of this would of course be Mulder, a Mulder flirting with us Scully in a way where it's like, can you let the young, pretty new to the FBI agent like establish herself before you start like undermining her by trying to take her out on a date or whatever? And it's like, there isn't any of that.
Right. Thankfully.
Yeah, exactly.
I also did not realize how small she was. She's so little.
Yeah, she's little.
She has such tall energy.
She
has real tall person energy. But and I mean, I know that like it was, I guess, known like there's a big height difference between the two of them, but like it's really obvious in this first episode. Like, she's so little. She's like 5'3", I think, in real life.
There's one of my favorite little fun facts. If you're already an X-Files fan, I feel like the show has been talked about so much that you're probably not going to learn a lot here.
Yeah.
But
No.
one of my little fun facts is the Scully box.
Yes.
Which it's an Apple box specifically for Gillian Anderson. So whenever they're like having their one-on-one conversations, I know that that's something that is used all the time in film, but they called it the Scully box, and I just thought that was cute.
Yeah.
So anytime they're eye to eye, it's because she's on her Scully box.
Yeah. No, I definitely like. I enjoyed the two of them because partly because I already like them as actors, like, and it was fun to see them at the beginning of things.
That's so funny to have such a different experience because they're so Mulder and Scully.
And they are, that's the weird thing is like this show was such an integral part of pop culture when I was a young person that they are to me too. They've always been Mulder and Scully to me, even though I apparently have watched maybe 2 episodes of this show.
It's so funny.
Like, I feel like I remember seeing them on TV as Mulder and Scully, but I don't remember what specific episode I would have seen. So it was probably just something that was on TV and I happened to see it.
Yeah, I'm just going to read this. This is from the Mary Sue. At the surprisingly tiny height of 5'2", Gillian Anderson was a full 10 inches shorter than her X-Files co-star. So they use an Apple box, a common tool used for a lot of television and film. For actors whose height doesn't really jibe with other actors in a scene. Generally, they are 8 by 20 by 12 inches, but since the height disparity between the X-Files stars was exceptionally great, Anderson's slightly higher Scully box was measured at about an apple and a half. It's really cute.
It is really cute. It's funny. They're talking about, there's this reference to an article in Vulture about the influence of Scully on shows that have happened since. And it's like Bones from the show Bones, Carter from Agent Carter, Veronica Mars from Veronica Mars.
Oh, of course.
Olivia
the
Benson.
young investigator. Mm-hmm. I feel like they all, it's like a Holmes and Watson thing a little bit, where somebody's got to be the eccentric and somebody's got to be the more stoic one. But I feel like Scully isn't quite that rigid as people when like if people are using Mulder and Scully as a shorthand, that's what they mean. They mean like a kook and a really rigid person, and it's not really that.
No, and that's what I was expecting. And even the first episode, I was like, no, that's not actually like that strict black and white isn't what's happening.
Yeah, and I think it sells Scully especially short. I think she gets. I think smart people like you and I understand that Scully is perfect, and I would die for her. I understand if it would take you more than one episode to get there, but you could see how somebody could get there.
Well, I would die for Gillian Anderson anyway. So
exactly, yeah. But yeah, I think she's so much more interesting than that. Do you want to talk world building? Is it time?
Yeah, I think so. But before that, since we're talking about Gillian Anderson, I just realized or found out or read on Wikipedia that she's an art collector, which makes me like her even more. Like, she owns work by like Deanne Arbus, Helen Levitt, Cindy Sherman, Kiki Smith. Like, she's got good taste too, like a bunch of feminist artists.
Of course she does.
Hell yeah. God, I love her.
We should talk. You didn't get to hear it this time, but I'm sure that you know it. The opening credits theme song, it's iconic. They're the same up through season 8, and then for season 9, they tried to do this like updated, slightly sleeker version. And then when they came back in 2016, they went right back to the original. They were like, "We fucked up. We know we did. Yeah. We're so sorry. We know what you want." I finally learned something about that title sequence is just all that weird. It looks like somebody made it like as a home like senior project. It's just like weird footage and stuff all kind of collaged together. And I learned that most of the stuff, the different like bodies and shapes and stuff that show up throughout were actually shot by the company Castle Bryant Johnson that did the opening for them. They had, this is from Empire, I actually don't know when this was originally published, but it was updated August of last year, so it's pretty up to date. Apparently, the company had done a couple of hundred opens, many of them for 20th Century Fox. They called us up. This is Bruce Bryant from the company. About the X-Files, and we met with them. They also did the opening for Frasier. I like this quote. We did about 20 different versions of the Skyline. It definitely took less time than the X-Files.
Oh my God. I mean, that's an iconic opening.
Mm-hmm. There's like, you see somebody pointing at a flying saucer. That's Bruce from the company. There's like a hand. There's a face. That like warped face is just somebody from their crew. They apparently took a bunch of different faces and warped them and just picked the face that looked the weirdest with that effect on it.
It feels a little Blair Witch.
It's totally, yeah. It
like the DIY-ness of it.
Yeah, I love it. The one shot that makes me laugh every time is where it just says paranormal activity on the screen. And then there's this weird video footage behind it. I always thought it was some like weird abstract effect that my brain like turned into two fat birds with big beaks reaching down. And they're apparently it's a germinating seed that they mirrored. So it's something real. My brain was like, that can't be real. Make it a different thing. But it's just germinating seeds, stock footage.
That's so weird.
So it's just like weird. It's just a bunch of weird stuff.
Yeah, it feels like a class project.
Yeah, exactly. There's like
Yeah.
a Vertigo type shot that looks like somebody kind of falling overhead, and it's just one of the guys in a paper painter's outfit that then they like super overexposed.
Yeah.
I think it's really fun. I like that they got like
Yeah,
that
that's
kind
really
of freedom
funny.
to go wild on it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's so iconic and so important to fans.
When we watched, I know I keep bringing it up, but when we watched 6 Feet Under, I remember saying as soon as that theme song starts, it's like, there we are with the crow and the whole thing. Just feels like you're in it.
That's exactly how I feel. The X-Files. It's so like, and I think you feel this way about 6 Feet Under. It's so funny because they're not particularly comforting subjects.
No.
But I feel so soothed.
Yeah.
The second it comes on. It's just.
Yeah. Just kind of hanging out with the people again, you know, my buddies, Claire and David and Nate. So should we talk about the world building? Because I think it's pretty, I mean, this one, I feel like it fit exactly in what I expected it to feel like for the most part.
So in that way, what were you expecting?
I was expecting 90s spooky, like, government conspiracy vibes, like running around in the rain investigating. Like it was exactly what I was expecting. And it does set everything up in that way. Like it sets up the government part, it sets up their relationship, it sets up the like existence of other, you know, phenomena. It does kind of lay all of the groundwork.
Yeah. And I think it's really smart of them to have them travel in the first episode because, like we said earlier, because it's the FBI, they have access to everything everywhere in the United States, at least, right?
Yeah.
So showing us that, like, this is a show that isn't, even though everything is shot in Vancouver, that it's, that we know that, like, the show could go kind of anywhere. I think it's really smart. There's a lot of them traveling on on planes and renting cars and doing all of that. It's very fun.
That's exciting.
Little jet
more
setters.
90s cars is another reason for me to watch it.
It always, I know that, like, of course the cars are 90s cars because that's what it was shot, but I'm always like, great choice. Great choice, guys.
Yeah. I didn't realize that. So to tie Duchovny into our sort of world that we've built, haha. It said in 2017 he decided to put his acting career on hold so he could focus on his career as a novelist and singer-songwriter. Duchovny's then last acting job was in the 11th season of The X-Files in 2018. He made his return to acting in The Craft Legacy, the 2020 sequel to The Craft. What?
We did
talk
know that
about
he
this?
was. Yeah, we did talk about him being in it.
I have no memory. He's put out some albums too.
Yeah, and a handful of books that I think are, at least some of them are pretty well reviewed.
Yeah.
I think Bucky fucking Dent is the one that I think has gotten the best reviews, but like 4 or 5 books between 2015 and 2021. That's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
I think he's like a real smarty pants.
Well, he went to Princeton.
We won't hold that against him.
Yeah, I know. People not from Jersey may be not understanding why that we're not excited about that, but Princeton's not really, no offense, part of Jersey.
Yeah. We're still looking for a Jersey connection for the pilot, despite the fact that he went to Princeton, because we're not sure that we're going to count that.
Yeah. He also went to, I mentioned this off mic, he went to this fancy school in Manhattan, the Collegiate School for Boys, where he was a classmate of JFK Jr.
It's just such a fancy lad.
Well, he graduated as head boy.
It's so funny because
that was the thing.
Mulder is, when they ask Scully at the beginning what she knows about him, and she's like, oh, he's really gifted, blah, blah, blah. And you're picturing this kind of
Oxford.
Like, exactly. You're picturing like a real brainiac. And then this kind of like, just like he looks he looks like he should be an airhead.
Yeah.
Like he's got this like kind of like I said floppy hair and this like just like I don't know. It's funny to learn that David Duchovny is sort of a brainiac because
more than sort of. He graduated Princeton Phi Beta Kappa and summa cum laude.
Like that's crazy.
With a degree in English literature. His poetry received an honorable mention for a college prize from the Academy of American Poets. The title of his senior thesis was The Schizophrenic Critique of Pure Reason in Beckett's Early Novels. He also has a Master of Arts in English Literature from Yale and began work on a PhD that remains unfinished. Wait, I'm not done. The title of his uncompleted doctoral thesis is Magic and Technology in Contemporary Fiction and Poetry. How cool is that?
I would love that. I mean, he didn't like rewrite Einstein or anything like Scully did, but it's still pretty cool.
Sure. Yes. That's so funny though. He is a real smarty pants. What are some of the questions that it sets up?
Well, so I mean, the number one is, are aliens real, right? There's like the obvious ones. What is the government hiding? Is Mulder a kook? Is there more to it? Obviously the mystery of his sister, right?
Yeah. That was something that I was like, whoa, wait, they just threw that in there.
We should talk about that because it's obviously he's a conspiracy theorist because he's whatever it is. This is the Yellow Jackets of it all. Is this like a screen memory that he's invented to cover up some horrific thing that actually happened to his sister? Or
right. Yeah.
Just to go back a little bit, that scene with them when he first tells Scully, I think is so lovely because it comes pretty much right after she comes over in her bra and her underwear, and it could go one way, and then the next scene she's like tucked into his bed and he's sitting and they're having this like really like vulnerable, sweet middle of the night conversation where he's like being really open with her, and it's so like tender and soft. And
yeah, that scene was very sweet, especially when they set it up like, ooh, what's gonna happen, and you're like, no, they're just gonna bond and chat.
Yep. Share some trauma.
It was nice. Yeah, like you do in a motel right before it burns down.
Exactly. Yeah, the small town coordination of like the medical examiner and the sheriff or whatever he is, like being like there's just a lot they're going to. That was because they're covering it up to protect Billy, right? But
right.
Do you get the impression? It seems like maybe I'm dumb. Maybe what I'm going to say is going to make me sound dumb. That I'm like, it seems like, but they're guarding. Like the adults have seen the abductions happen, right?
Yeah,
like he's there guarding it,
right? Like I know what you're trying to get at, and I don't think it's dumb. Like you assume that what they're hiding is like aliens are here, but they're hiding like this kid killed someone or killed people,
right? Like, but aliens are, but it's both, right?
Yes,
like they must be. It seems like they are watching. And so in that case, don't you I feel like if I were Billy's dad and these two friendly FBI people showed up, I'd be like, thank God you're here. These aliens keep showing up and making my son murder people. Like, can you help us?
Yeah. Yes.
Here's everything you need to know.
Yes. No, I totally agree. I feel like that would make much more sense to be like, hey guys, can you help us figure this out?
Finally, some people who know what's going on.
Yeah. No, exactly.
That's what I like. Again, hard for me to criticize the show. I think it's perfect, but that really, and that's why I find it the pilot is confusing to me because I don't totally understand if I'm missing something or if I'm reading too much into something. And
I think, do we know about how the pilot was filmed for this? Like, was it filmed way before? Like, it seems like it was filmed just like normal right before. It was filmed in March 1993 and it aired in September 93.
Yeah.
So it wasn't one of those like Sopranos where like it was over a year and things changed.
Yeah, no.
They only took 14 days to film.
Well, I guess they've got to move pretty fast when you're doing 20 a season.
Yeah, seriously.
Like 200 episodes of this show.
Yeah.
It's so crazy. Plus, the movies. So just to go back to those questions then, I know you asked me, I probably should have asked you. Other than those main questions, someone who's like kind of going into it for the first time, basically. Are there any other questions that kind of popped up for you that you're interested in? Or not even questions, but just like what kind of things, would keep you watching?
Yeah. Like I said, for me, I don't care about the aliens part, but I think that the questions for me that would keep me watching are like, how does their relationship develop? Does he convince her that these things are happening? Who are the creepy old men in the government that are stopping them from doing stuff,
I do love that it's just old men.
It's just creepy old white men, yeah.
A ton of old men.
Yeah, of course it is.
Yeah.
That's what government people look like. They look like those guys.
Exactly.
To me, it's really mostly like, how is this relationship going to develop, and who's going to convince who, and how is it going to get negotiated, and how are they going to stay ahead of the mean government men, and, can they get into that hallway in the Pentagon or that storage room in the Pentagon with all of the boxes in it? Yeah.
Who's going to convince who is such a good question, because the obvious thing is Mulder has to convince Scully that her worldview is not as like that there's more beyond her like slightly conservative worldview. And certainly there's a lot of that. But I will say there are episodes, like one of my favorite and just sort of like most critically acclaimed, generally loved episodes is one where like the conspiracy ends up being totally wrong. Mulder ends up being totally wrong. And so I like that it's not just Scully running around being made to look a fool all the time,
Yeah. Well, and also I think, and partly what I meant by that is not, because I'm obviously the whole point of this is that stuff is real. And so it is partly him convincing her. But I think when I think about her convincing him, it's more like her reining him in and keeping him sort of attached to reality as they figure these things out. And like not letting him go off on, because obviously him on his own, he wasn't getting anywhere because he wasn't thinking in the way that someone with her sort of ordered, very administrative brain would think.
That's such a good point, because he even says in this episode, this is the closest I've ever gotten.
Right.
And it's like when we meet him, he's shoved away in the basement.
Right. She legitimizes him by like providing the framework of the way that she thinks about things.
Which is so funny because they sent her in to sort of debunk him.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the fact that he starts out in the basement and then like their next scene together, they're like on a plane heading to the other side of the country is like, that's significant. That's such a good call, Jody.
Yeah. I mean, I enjoyed it. I could see myself watching more of it, I think, in sort of a casual way, just like leaving something on. I think that the interesting thing about doing this whole series with the pilots is like, I do feel like now when I'm out of things to watch, I can just turn on one of the pilots that we've started and keep moving throughout. I mean, of course, 6 Feet Under is the one that I did that with naturally, but I did also watch, I think when we did Lost, I watched like the second and maybe part of the third episode also after a while. But yeah, I liked it.
I'm so glad.
Yeah. I knew I would. I also knew that like, I don't have a sci-fi, like special interest like some people do. And so I think that's why it never really got me, but
I weirdly don't. I'm trying to figure, maybe I do.
Battlestar Galactica?
Okay, well, wait, but you know how I came to Battlestar Galactica? I wasn't seeking out sci-fi show. That was a pandemic project. My co-host needed someone who'd never watched it. Mm-hmm. And I hadn't, because I don't know. I don't know. I got to do some soul searching.
I mean, you're a cryptid person.
I totally am. I don't not like sci-fi stuff, obviously, but what I seek out is way more like supernatural or fantasy.
Right.
I think is what it is.
You're witchy.
And I think that's the like sci-fi stigma, really, where I'm like, I'm a nerd, but I'm not that kind of nerd.
Right.
And maybe I'm slowly learning that actually I kind of am.
Yeah. I mean, the shows and movies that you have chosen.
Well, Lost is a really good example of, I bought into that show hard because I thought it was more, and it is sort of supernatural, but there's a lot of sci-fi stuff in that show that we've talked about, like what it sets you up for in that pilot.
Yeah.
And the sci-fi elements of it are not. The supernatural stuff certainly is.
Yeah.
But like that show has time travel and a nuclear bomb goes off at one point.
Yeah.
That like there's all kinds of craziness that I wasn't seeking in the first place.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, no, I really liked it. I definitely will be going back to watch more 6 Feet Under, though. I just put the hottest picture of Gillian Anderson ever in the chat.
There is the most, I'll link to it in our show notes. Mm-hmm. It's David LaChapelle shoot from the 90s. It's Gillian Anderson and David Duchovny in just some of the craziest. I mean, it's David LaChapelle. Mm-hmm. So it's all like.
It's sort of like kitschy, like pop atomic age, like bondage core.
Sci-fi bent, because there's like. Some of the stuff has like alien autopsy kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. But it's just like Gillian Anderson in a leather mask with David Duchovny with like kind of like Liberty spikes. There's like one of him where he looks like Gambit from the X-Men, kind of. Like one of them, he's in a big metal head cage.
Yep.
They're just crazy. There's a lot of patent leather, which I learned was invented in New Jersey.
Yes.
There's our Jersey connection.
Okay, that's a bit of a stretch, but
patent leather, not that stretchy.
Fair. Oh, God.
What do you mean, oh, God? You don't know what's going to happen.
I did know what was going to happen. Well, I feel like that kind of... It's weird to have such a low-key episode about a show that you're so obsessed with, but it just feels like it's like, yes, of course it's good. Like...
Yeah, I agree. It is just one of those shows that's like we had to cover it, of course. It's also, this pilot is kind of like obviously I think it's great. I'm glad you thought it was great and had fun watching it. It is also just held up all the time, always, as like one of the greatest pilots.
Yeah.
So, and just real quick, a couple of here's a little fun fact we can go out on before we talk about what we're going to talk about next week.
Okay.
Vince Gilligan, who we know from Breaking Bad, really kind of got his start. He'd written a couple of screenplays, I think, but really got his start writing for the X-Files.
I didn't know that.
And, yep. That's who I knew him from first and foremost. And I want to read this fun little blurb. I'm going to read something from, I think we talked a couple of weeks ago about David Bianculli, who's been the NPR Fresh Air reviewer for a bazillion years, and who I had the privilege of taking a history of film class with in undergrad, and he is lovely. And I don't remember if I said this on mic, so I'm going to say it again because I love it so much. He would give dollar bills out for good answers in class.
I don't think you said that on mic. I think you said that to me separately. But yeah, that's fantastic.
Maybe, yeah. I mean, he's got tenure, so I was going to say maybe you're technically not allowed to pay students.
I don't think you are, but I'm sure he's fine.
That man can do whatever he wants. Yeah. He also gave out full-size candy bars for exams. He was the best. He also a great teacher, I should say. It wasn't just the money and the candy.
Not just the money?
Yeah, no. He wrote a really great book back in 2016 or 2016. called The Platinum Age of Television: From I Love Lucy to The Walking Dead, How TV Became Terrific. It's a great book if you like. There's a little profile on 6 Feet Under in it, actually, and Twin
cool.
Peaks, I think. But he interviewed Vince Gilligan for the book, and I just want to read a little bit about it because this is, again, fun fact. She's talking about an episode that Gilligan wrote called Drive. He says it was about a paranoid, bigoted, severely agitated man named Crump, whose wife had suddenly died when her head exploded, and Crump feared the same thing would happen to him if he didn't keep moving in a certain direction at a certain speed, so he kidnaps the X-Files agent Mulder at gunpoint and forces him to drive, in hopes of alleviating the pain and pressure in Crump's head. We had a hard time casting the part of Mr. Crump, Gilligan says. You needed a great actor who could be scary and intense and deliver horrible, hateful lines, yet at the same time have some sort of innate humanity whereby the audience feels sorry for the guy. Not to spoil it, Gilligan says many years after the episode was televised, but the guy dies at the end. Many actors were brought in, actors, Gilligan says, with wonderful chops, but without that extra something that made us want to root for them. And then, after several long days of auditions, the casting director brought in an actor who just nailed it, according to Gilligan. He was the guy from the moment he sat down. I looked at the other producers and whispered, OTW, our slang for off to work, which is what we say when we know the guy is being hired. In this case, that guy was Bryan Cranston.
Yep, that's what I thought you were going to say.
And sure enough, Gilligan continues, Bryan played the part wonderfully. His performance stuck with me, which is saying a lot, because I was with the X-Files for 7 years and did 202 episodes.
Wow.
Yeah, and then he goes on to do Malcolm in the Middle.
Right.
And then, obviously, of course, he comes around to do Breaking Bad.
Wow.
And it's directly because of his work on the X-Files. Because it's not Malcolm in the Middle. He didn't watch Malcolm in the Middle and think. He even says that in this thing. He's like, he's a totally different guy. I didn't even realize it was him.
Yeah.
On Malcolm in the Middle. So, yeah. So that's a fun little...
Yeah.
I think that's such a fun little fact.
That's crazy.
I could just chit-chat about the X-Files for the rest of my life and do that happily.
I feel like we should watch at some point the Jersey Devil episode, even though it's not a pilot, just for the heck of it.
Yeah, it might be fun to do, to have folks watch a standalone Monster of the Week episode. And that one it's a doozy.
I mean, and if we, again, this is future casting, but if we decide we're done with, like, the pilots that we've wanted to watch, we could go back to like some of the standalone important episodes, like the Gateway episode idea.
Yeah,
even though that's someone else's idea, I don't care.
I mean, podcasts were someone else's idea. Also, again, if we get to
Mark Maron, right?
It'll be either whichever comes first. We get through all the pilots we want to watch. Yellow Jackets comes back.
Yeah.
Or we get to 10 million downloads.
Sure. Yes, of course.
And then you'll be paying for it. So.
Sure.
Do you want to let folks know what we're watching next week?
Yeah. So this is a bit of a wild card, actually. All along, it's been sort of like my show, your show. One of us has an attachment, you know. This is not that. This is a current show that neither of us have seen, but is connected to both Yellow Jackets and to other shows that one or both of us have watched in some way. So we are watching the first episode of Fallout.
I'm
kind of psyched.
I'm really excited.
Yeah.
It's a genre that you and I don't necessarily seek out.
No. Although, I mean, like, I did watch, so I know it's not a zombie movie. It's a post-apocalyptic movie, but I did watch The Walking Dead. I did watch Last of Us. Like, I do kind of sometimes enjoy a post-apocalyptic landscape travel, like, quest movie or TV show. So,
yeah, and it is. So, listeners may be shying away from the show for the same reason I did at first, because it is technically based on a video game series. And it's one that I haven't played. I've played, hold on, there's a game called Fallout Shelter that is a little idle clicker game for your phone that is so fun, but it has taught me nothing about the series or the actual games. But first of all, Jackie is the lead. So
Ella Purnell, not Jackie.
So, I mean,
Jackie's
just
dead.
For that reason alone.
Yeah.
I feel like we have to. But it's also getting great. You said mixed reviews, which I think is true, but it's gotten really good reviews from people who I genuinely and generally trust, who aren't necessarily video games people. So I'm like,
Yeah,
I'll give it a whirl. I'll give anything a whirl.
totally.
Right? Like,
they talked about it on the watch, and they were split. Andy thought it was not good. Chris thought it was better than The Last of Us, which knocked Andy over. So I'm curious to see what we think. Because I know you haven't watched Last of Us, but I did. And I started out very skeptical, fell in love with the third episode, and then just continued watching because, yeah, they got me.
I mean, this one's the number 2 show in the U.S. right now. I think you said it's on Amazon Prime. I'm just going to read the little blurb because this kind of sells me. Based on one of the greatest video games of all time, Fallout is the story of the haves and have-nots in a world in which there's almost nothing left to have. 200 years after the apocalypse, which I'm always interested in, when we're like past the apocalypse and we're just kind of like, okay, what does life look like now? The gentle denizens of luxury fallout shelters are forced to return to the incredibly complex, gleefully weird, and highly violent universe waiting for them above. Gleefully weird is like, oh, that's all you had to say to me. Like,
Yeah.
I'm going to give it a whirl.
Yeah, no, I'm excited to watch it. I feel like it'll be fun to jump into the present for a minute before we jump backwards again and look at some older shows.
That's true, too, because we really have we're always building vocabularies on this show, and I think we've got a pretty good set to kind of apply.
Definitely.
And focus on something new that neither one of us have the rest of the show to connect to, because it's been really hard for you and me to talk about these pilots kind of independent of the show. So it'll be fun to do that.
Yeah, it'll actually be a show where we've only seen the first episode, and that will be a new thing for both of us. So yeah, that'll be next week. Where can they find us in the meantime?
At WatchersPodNJ on Instagram, WatchersPodNJ at Gmail. Those are the places.
They can find me on Instagram at Jody_Mim, and they can find you at
AQAndreAQ.
And yeah, we will see you. Where are we going to see them?
We're going to find out together.
Yeah.
So I don't know. In a wasteland?
In a wasteland. Yes. All right. We will see you next week.